experiencing homelessness. We are on track to surpass that number this year, unless things change. Everybody knows that this is the crisis we see in Los Angeles. We see encampments everywhere, not just in Skid Row and not just in Hollywood and Venice anymore. We can see them really in almost every single part of the city. And what's different about homelessness in Los Angeles is that unlike most other major cities, certainly ones off the West Coast, 75% of the people who are homeless in Los Angeles are unsheltered every single day. And this is what keeps the sun out of their eyes or the rain off their face, or strangers from approaching them at night. And we also have several thousand, I think over 4,000 people estimated to be living in their vehicles here in Los Angeles. We are in Los Angeles, although it's hard to tell from looking at it. We're actually doing more than we ever have. Last year, Los Angeles housed over 21,000 people. That's Los Angeles County. That is more than double what we were doing in 2014. It is a result starting to pay off of the significant investments that the voters made in HHH and H to give us the resources to start implementing solutions. But the crisis is still getting worse while that happens. Went up 12% in the county, 16% in the city of Los Angeles. And we're actually doing better, believe it or not, than most of the state of California, where some places actually saw an increase of 40, 50, or more %. Our investment is actually paying off. But to explain what the hell is happening here, as an example, I'll talk about homeless veterans. When we did the point-in-time count in 2018, we counted about 5,000 homeless veterans, I believe. And over that subsequent year, we housed about 2,500 of them, about half. When we did the point-in-time count, again, beginning of 2019, there were 5,000 homeless veterans. Because people keep falling in to homelessness faster than we're bringing them out. There are tons of pipelines into homelessness, and they're fast. There's lots of them. They move really fast. And there's not a lot of pipelines out of homelessness, and they're slow and sclerotic. So who actually is homeless in Los Angeles? You can get one perspective if you read nextdoor.com, and you get another if you actually talk to people. Here in Los Angeles, I'll just talk about people I've met over the past 2 months. I've met a nurse, a retired nurse. I have met a guy who served in Vietnam. I met a woman who was working as a secretary and her boyfriend partner as an engineer who suffered medical trauma, and they wound up on the streets. We have kids, 21% or 19%, I'm sorry, of the students in community college in California are homeless. We have veterans who are homeless. We have about a fifth to a quarter of us who are homeless are chronically homeless. They've been homeless for a long time and suffer from a disability. We've got about 30% who are suffering from some form of substance abuse or mental illness. And we have a very large number of people who are experiencing or have experienced domestic violence. Domestic violence is an enormous contributor to homelessness in Los Angeles and around the country. 50% of the women who are homeless suffer, or 50% of homeless women have suffered some form of domestic violence. And another significant population growing of people who are homeless are seniors. Another big contributor to homelessness in Los Angeles County is people who are emancipated from the foster care system. If you've been a foster child and you have not been adopted and you get emancipated, there are estimates that say 40 to 50% chance that you'll become homeless. So as I said, families fleeing domestic violence. In this district, I believe the latest count showed that 55% of the people who are homeless in the 11th district had some experience with domestic violence. It was not necessarily the contributing factor to them becoming homeless, but at some point in their lives they had experienced domestic violence or intimate partner violence. To me, that speaks to the fact that there are so many young homeless people here in Los Angeles, many of whom have fled really horrific childhoods. As I said, aged out foster youth, seniors are a growing segment of the population. And then we often hear the statement that almost everybody here in Los Angeles is not here from Los Angeles. Everybody who's homeless in Los Angeles is not from here. And while we have all met many people, and certainly there's large segments of the most visible homeless population who are people from other places, there are large segments of the most visible population that LAPD may interact with, that you may interact with or see downtown or at the beach, who are suffering from a mental illness or from some drug situation. That is not the reality for most people. 65% of the people have been in LA County for more than 20 years, and 75% lived in Los Angeles before becoming homeless. So what causes homelessness? Everybody has an idea, right? Well, it ain't one thing. It's a whole range of things. You talk to people who are homeless, and you will get as many different stories as you will the people you talk to. There's a number of different contributing factors, whether it's poverty, whether it's a tragedy in the family that has caused a family to shatter and someone fell out on the streets, whether it's an eviction, or whether it's a mental illness. There's a million reasons that people are homeless in Los Angeles. One of the biggest contributors we find is the cost of housing in Los Angeles. The cost of housing is nuts. Minimum wage, $18,000 a year. Average income in LA County, $49,000 a year. The average rent that you need, the money you need, salary you need to pay of rent for a two-bedroom apartment is $87,000. We just do not have housing that people can afford in Los Angeles. And every year, as units get Ellis acted or buildings get converted for some other purpose, more and more people are being forced out on the street. So what is the solution to homelessness? It's housing. It's housing. There are many other things that help people get unhomeless, but the one thing that is a common denominator that is a solution for everybody who's homeless is housing. And so the city of Los Angeles, we have a choice. We can either have people living in sidewalk encampments or in housing. We can have people leaving their belongings in encampments on the street, or we can provide storage for them. We can have people going to the bathroom on the street, or we can provide 24-hour restrooms. We can have people living in their vehicles, or we can provide safe parking, as we've done in a couple places in this district. Now, everybody looks at the city because we're the most visible form of government. And so people say, what the hell is the city doing? Why isn't the city doing more? And often I get, why are you talking about housing? Why aren't you talking more about mental health? Why aren't you talking more about drugs? It's because every level of government has a different role to play. And the city doesn't generally do healthcare. The city doesn't do mental health. The city doesn't do the types of interventions. But the one thing we can do is land use. The one thing we can do is housing. So if you go see, if you're looking to build a new home or renovate your home, the city is not your general contractor. We're the equivalent of a plumber or a carpenter. So someone may say, the carpenter, why aren't you ever talking about the plumbing in the house? It's because just like the city does housing, the carpenter does that one piece of the bigger project. So we all have a big piece to play, and three of these levels of government, the city, the county, and the state, work with and to some degree fund LASA, which is sort of the core agent for our homelessness solutions here in Los Angeles. As you know, the city and the county are spending a ton of money to address homelessness. The state has just jumped in, and unfortunately, the federal government is actually moving us in the opposite direction. They have cut domestic violence shelter beds. They're threatening to evict 11,000 people, families with kids, from public housing in Los Angeles. And they have stalled on really doing anything at the VA. The city has stepped in and has been funding some of the housing there. So under the housing rubric, the city is moving forward with doing supportive and affordable housing. We have, as of last week's Homelessness and Poverty Committee meeting, funded 8,625 units of housing with Proposition HHH funds. We are building 25 bridge housing locations. Those are temporary shelter, 24/7 around the city, and more to come. We are also, I tend to get feedback on whatever my most controversial idea is at any given time. So bridge housing is a controversial idea, and people will say, why is that the only thing he's doing? Before that, proposing controversial permanent supportive housing, and everybody was, why is that the only thing he's doing? The truth is, the city and the county together are doing over 50 different things. We're doing a whole range of things, which is everything from long-term housing to short-term housing to emergency shelter beds, to rehabbing existing buildings, to providing safe parking, to raising wages and doing a whole bunch of prevention strategies. So in this whole thing, I have tried to be the guy at City Hall who keeps trying to shift the conversation. When I first took office, the only thing that anybody was talking about was permanent supportive housing, which is the absolutely right solution for people who are chronically homeless. But it is not necessarily the solution for everybody who's homeless. People who are newly homeless don't need a permanent unit with wraparound services all to themselves. There are other solutions. So I have constantly been trying to shift the conversation to where it isn't. So I shifted the conversation a couple of years ago to get us to do more to get people off the streets sooner, which is how we got into the conversation about bridge housing around Los Angeles. I'm now trying to get us to places where we're shifting the conversation to faster and less expensive solutions. Permanent supportive housing, absolutely necessary. It has like a 90% success rate nationwide, but we need other faster and quicker solutions for people who do not necessarily need that intervention. So one of the things I'm promoting is shared housing, which is people actually share a room. Sometimes you might get a 4-bedroom house and 8 people live there. And there's an organization in my district based in Culver City here on the west side that has been doing this for years. And it doesn't work for everybody, but the people they approach, they get 23% of the people off the street the same day and 41% of the people within 2 days. Doesn't work for everybody, but you have to have some sort of an income stream, SSI or disability or something like that. But it is a fast solution, and I've been trying very hard to push the city to do this and the county to do this, and it's starting to catch on. I actually did a pilot project with this in Venice a couple years ago. I gave them 50 grand, and I said, house as many people as you can, as quickly as you can. And within 2 months, they housed about 35 people, which is pretty damn fast and pretty inexpensive. The other thing we're working on is ways to prevent people from becoming homeless. Like I said, there's more ways into homelessness than ways out. And if we do not stop the flow of people going into homelessness, we are never, ever going to end this problem. So the county's doing a lot to help emancipate foster youth. The county is doing a lot to provide other services for people who are getting out of jails and county hospitals. One of the things here in Los Angeles we're trying to focus on is eviction prevention. Trying to give people short-term subsidies so that they can make the rent in case of a disaster or some sort of family problem that is an aberration to their usual payment schedule, and providing people a counsel to help them through eviction proceedings. 90% of the people who go to court facing an eviction without an attorney get evicted. 90% of those who go to court with an attorney actually don't get evicted. And there's a lot of fraudulent evictions out there. We have to actually curb it. We are also looking to increase the revenue for affordable housing, do more to protect affordable housing here in the coastal zone through a special law called the Mellow Act. And we're also looking at finding ways to induce or encourage people to use vacant units or properties they own to be used for either affordable housing or for homeless housing. And then the other thing I've been focusing on is a street strategy. Is part of the way I've tried to shift the conversation is realizing that if we're not getting everybody off the street tonight, we need to be doing things differently. We spent close to $40 million last year, supposedly cleaning up encampments in the city of Los Angeles. And I don't think there's any neighbor anywhere who has ever told the city to complain about an encampment who feels like anything has been done after that $40 million is spent. It's because we treat the problem like it's a trash problem instead of a public health problem. When we do it, we wind up disrupting the continuum of care. What we're trying now to do with Mayor Garcetti's leadership is shift our approach to more of a public health approach and provide more showers and provide more restrooms so that disease does not spread, to provide dumpsters so people can put trash in the dumpsters beforehand. And to create outreach teams that are not scattered and reactive, but that are going there every single day, building up the trust and providing services to people instead of showing up once a week with a sanitation crew, actually going there every week or every couple days and making consistent contact and getting people off the street. So what we know doesn't work and the city keeps trying it, is criminalization. We for 20 years decided that the way we should deal with homelessness is to make LAPD deal with it, is to arrest our way out of it. Now, make no mistake, if somebody's committing crime, if somebody's committing theft, if somebody is threatening people, if somebody's doing drugs, they should be prosecuted. But we have had a tendency to criminalize the status of homelessness, and it has made the problem worse in Los Angeles. And if we spent 1/10 of the energy we spend on criminalization, on finding faster and cheaper ways to house people, we'd probably have 10,000 more people off the streets tonight. The other thing that is a problem for us are false narratives. Next door, social media, that tells the story that everybody in Los Angeles who's homeless is from somewhere else, is on drugs, and is mentally ill. Now, those people exist, and honest to God, they're probably the ones LAPD sees most, and they're the ones that seem most visible. But a lot of people who are homeless do not present themselves as homeless. Those 20% of the community college students, they walk down the street, you don't know that they're homeless. They blend in. Women who are fleeing domestic violence blend in. We have to make sure that we're crafting policies that are addressing the whole range of homelessness. The other thing that's a problem is when somebody says there's a silver bullet. If somebody tells you that there is a silver bullet, a quick and easy solution to homelessness, they're either trying to take your money or they're looking for your vote. It ain't true. This is a crisis that has been decades in the making, and it is going to take a lot of hard work and a lot of focus and a lot of difficult choices to get us out of it. The other thing I describe as the king of the mountain syndrome is where people who have one solution to homelessness are as invested in tearing down all the other solutions as they are in promoting their own. We've seen a lot of that in the news over the past few weeks. Homelessness requires a million different solutions. We need to promote them all. So I'll close by just saying what's happening here on the west side. We have approved funding for 493 units of housing with HHH dollars in 8 different projects, 3 of them at the VA, 2 of them in West LA, 3 of them in Venice. We have more in the pipeline. I have one coming in Mar Vista. We have others that are in the queue. And I am desperately looking for locations and places to do more in other parts of the district. I would like every community in my district to be part of the solution. We have safe parking for people living in their vehicles at my Westchester office and my West LA office. I should say the first safe parking on the west side was at the VA, thanks to our next speaker, Heidi Marston, who was, when she worked for the VA, someone who did not let red tape get in the way of anything and just got shit done. We are also building bridge housing, the temporary shelters, 100 beds for veterans on the VA property. The city is actually doing the construction, and the city and county are paying for it. And in Venice, where we're doing 154 beds, 100 for adults and 54 for transition-aged youth, people who are under the age of 24. It'll be the only youth one around. Supervisor Kuehl is also working with me and with Assemblyman Bloom to try to bring a bridge housing facility to West LA at the Armory, where we currently have an emergency winter shelter. And then on the VA, they're working on their master plan, which should help bring about 1,200 units of housing for homeless vets there. In the meantime, as I said, the city's helping fund what's going on now. We've also brought mobile toilets and hygiene services to the district, and we're expanding that, which gets us to the question of what can you do? It's a question I get all the time. And there's not a simple or an easy answer to it, because it really depends on what your abilities are, what your resources are, and what your interests are. There are some people who would love to go to a place like safe place like youth and hang out and talk to some of the young people and offer them some counsel, maybe offer them a job. There are some folks who've got some means and some resources. They'd like to pay for a night or 2 of meals at Safe Place for Youth or at one of our safe parking lots. There are people who have excess space on their property, and they can build an accessory dwelling unit, and the county will help actually with some of the permitting and the funding if you use that for affordable housing. We have a program in Los Angeles that got started in Venice called Host Homes, where seniors who have an extra room are taking in homeless college students and providing themselves company and providing them a place to live. There are people who are really, really bright in my district with a lot of resources. There are countless organizations in Los Angeles that would love to have you as a member of their board, helping them craft programs, helping them raise money. And I won't end without saying this, is we need more places for people to park at night in our safe parking program. The insurance is covered, the costs are covered, we need a place for people to stay. We've only got 3 on the west side. If you belong to a church, or a synagogue, or a mosque, or own a small business, or belong to a nonprofit, and you might be willing, or your congregation might be willing to be that place, please let me or Heidi know. We desperately need it. The other thing is there's a real push here in Palisades by some folks to find a place in Pacific Palisades for housing for homeless women. There's a great place in the Del Rey portion of my district that is Miriam's House, which is housing for women and their kids. There's a place in Venice called Harvest Home, which is a home for people who are women who are pregnant or who recently had children. They're single-family homes with a lot of bedrooms, and nobody knows they're there. And we are desperately looking for a place like that up here in Pacific Palisades. I don't ordinarily make appeals to my constituents to give me an entire home, but when you represent Brentwood and Pacific Palisades, there's a couple people, maybe, who actually have some investment properties that they're not using and don't intend to use for a few years. There are many organizations that would love to be able to find a place for women and their children to live and be able to go to school in a normal family setting, and that's a great way to be part of the solution. So I'm sorry it took so long, but I wanted to cover a lot.
So why don't you ask questions now of people at
Okay. How do you want to do it? Okay.
So I'll let you
Yes.
call in.
Hey, Mike.
Good.
Thanks for explaining. Great presentation. Really appreciate it. One of the questions that I have is about taking property through eminent domain, and why does that take so long? You guys are in charge of the city of LA.